Thanks, Fiona. Hello, you're watching Wales Today. I'm Nick Savini. The headlines. Paramedics changed the way they respond to emergencies with more focus on the most urgent cases and using volunteers to find out what patients need.
Go and see the GP or make their own way to A&E, or it could be that we need backup quickly. And that's saving the ambulances going out to absolutely everything.
With less than a 5% survival rate for cardiac arrests in the community, can it lead to improvements? Also tonight. The man accused of murdering his grandson, Ethan Ives Griffiths, tells the court he never slapped or hit him. Ali Jones leads tributes to the opera star Stuart Burrows, who's died at the age of 92. He was described as one of the great tenors. Or the latest from Wimbledon, where Swansea's 17-year-old Mimi Jou's taking on the British #1 Emma Raducanu.
And good evening from Switzerland, where Wales's women have arrived ahead of their first major tournament. And ready to greet them, hundreds of local school children will have the latest as they settle into their new training base here.
Good evening. Less than 5% of people who suffer a cardiac arrest outside of a hospital in Wales actually survive. That is half the rate of England and Scotland. So tomorrow, changes in the way paramedics respond are being brought in. The hope is they will lead to an improvement in survival rates. There'll be better questioning of those who call the emergency services to try to make sure the crews are sent out to those who need them the most. And there'll also be an active role for volunteers to be the eyes and ears of paramedics. Here's our health correspondent, Jenny Rees.
Nearly 10 months after suffering a cardiac arrest on Gower, Anthony Crothers is continuing his rehab and physio at Cardiff Met University. But he feels lucky his friend Glyn and a number of strangers came to his aid back in October.
Glyn was instrumental. He did CPR and initially set the ball rolling to save my life. There was a defib in the cafe. They call them bystanders, but they're not bystanders. Dean was walking past. He was there by chance, and he jumped in and helped Glyn. And I was really lucky because there was a retired anaesthetist in the village. There was an off-duty consultant. They're all heroes. I mean, they were integral in my survival.
Given survival rates for out-of-hospital cardiac arrests in Wales are less than 5%, half that of England and Scotland, changes are being brought in to ambulance response times to prioritise cases like Anthony's. That includes new roles in the ambulance control room to better scrutinise the calls coming in, as it's recognised that many calls trigger a blue light response. But when paramedics arrive, it's less urgent.
They will screen those calls and they will decide, right, that one needs to remain for an ambulance response or an ambulance resource, and then they will then decide if others will go for or need for an enhanced clinical triage, where those patients are then triaged by another clinician from the organisation. So this is all about the outcomes for our patients.
Given the high volume of calls coming into the service, lower down the priority list, it's sometimes hard to determine over the phone just how urgent the situation is. So in some scenarios, volunteers are asked to visit those waiting longer, to check a patient's pulse, blood pressure or oxygen levels and feed that back to clinicians in the control room.
I see it as instead of a patient having to wait a number of hours where it's potentially not such a serious condition, that we can go out and be the eyes on and ring up our clinical desk. And it may well be that, go and see the GP or make their own way to A&E, or it could be that we need backup quickly. And that's saving the ambulances going out to absolutely everything.
She said in her patch, West Wales, it's often the case that symptoms can be downplayed, making the observations she was trained to take all the more important.
I was called to a patient that had had a fall in the night and they were vomiting this morning. You do start thinking, has there been a head injury to make with the vomiting? When I got to the patient, there was a significant injury. This had happened in the night. They then rang 999 at midday, so had waited all that time, and the patient is in severe pain.
Because of the information provided by Jackie, clinicians in the control room had an ambulance on scene within an hour. The service hopes these changes will put a greater emphasis on patient survival. But when wider challenges remain, ambulances continue to have long waits outside hospitals, there is still much work to be done to improve the bigger picture.
And Jenny's with me now. So Jen, what we saw there is just one element of the changes. How likely is it that it can make much of a difference?
These are the parts of the system that the ambulance service can change. What it can't change is that kind of knotty, complex issue where they see ambulances waiting outside hospitals. Now, for that, we know that the Welsh Government has its own task force that is looking at that, and you can't strip out from that. It's so much involved with those patients who are well enough to be discharged but can't because the relevant bits of care aren't available to them. There'll also be some further work, though, by the ambulance service itself looking at amber calls, those less serious calls, because you can't split the two. You've got the hospital issue and you've got the huge numbers of amber calls coming in, and that's impacting the service's ability to get to these life and limb situations. Now, this all comes in tomorrow. So from that, we'll see much more data, specifically on cardiac arrests, whether that's, for example, the time it takes to get CPR started or defib started, and yes, ambulance response there too. But I think it will also focus the mind on the important role that bystanders play in starting CPR too.
OK, Jenny, thanks very much. A grandfather accused of murdering his 2-year-old grandson has told the court he never harmed him, but that his daughter was quick-tempered. Michael Ives and his wife Kerry Ives deny murdering Ethan Ives Griffiths in Garden City in Flintshire. They and his daughter Shannon Ives deny causing or allowing his death and child cruelty. Ethan died of a catastrophic brain injury after collapsing at his grandparents' home in 2021. Matthew Richards reports.
Michael Ives gave evidence at the start of his defence case. He told the jury his daughter Shannon was quick-tempered. He said if Ethan was misbehaving, she would start shouting and screaming at him. He said Ethan would bite his bottom lip, drawing blood, and Shannon would respond by giving him a backhander to the mouth. Michael Ives was shown an image taken from the family's home security camera of him in the back garden carrying Ethan by holding only his upper arm. He was asked why he did that. He said the grass had been cut and there were nettles, but I know that's no excuse. He was asked how he should have carried Ethan, and he replied, I should have put him on my side with his legs around my waist. Mr. Ives said he hadn't hit Ethan when he was filmed putting him into his car seat, even though his arm appeared to come down sharply towards the toddler. He said he was trying to get the seatbelt to plug in. On the 13th of August, the day before Ethan's fatal collapse, Michael Ives said he was in the living room when he heard a bang, turned round and saw Ethan lying on the floor. He said he was panicking because Ethan was lying still and just staring for a couple of minutes. He eventually came round. Asked why they took Ethan shopping later that day, he said Ethan said he wanted to come and was his normal, quiet self. The next evening, he said Ethan had been watching TV when he suddenly collapsed again. Ethan's legs, he said, were like jelly. He couldn't stand up. Despite attempts to bring him round, Ethan never regained consciousness and died 2 days later. Michael Ives said he'd never harmed Ethan in any way. The trial continues.
Matthew Richards there. It's a policy that's attracted plenty of controversy and criticism, and tomorrow MPs will have the chance to vote on the proposed cuts to welfare spending. But with the government facing a revolt from its own Labour backbenchers, the Prime Minister has already had to roll back on the changes, including limiting cuts to personal independence payments to new claimants only. Well, our political editor Gareth Lewis is in the newsroom for us. So Gareth, we finally got to it. And it's a big vote.
It is, Nick. The big question this evening, are these concessions enough to win over those 126 Labour MPs who were prepared to rebel? We still don't know how 4 of the 5 Welsh Labour rebels will vote. They're digesting not only those changes to PIP that you mentioned, but also more money being spent sooner on getting people back into work, and a review of the PIP assessment itself in conjunction with disabled people that will report back in autumn 2026. Now, one of the Welsh rebels, whilst not revealing how she would vote tomorrow, said that it was absolutely vital to get that assessment of PIP right.
I welcome her announcement that the Tim's review of the PIP process will be undertaken in partnership with people with disabilities, because this is critical, because we know that currently over 70% of appeals against PIP outcomes are overturned in favour of the claimant. We need to get the assessment process right first time and every time for all applicants.
And even these new changes are still controversial.
Yeah, they are, Nick. And just listening to what was said in a pretty passionate debate in the Commons earlier, it's very clear there are still some Labour MPs need to be convinced. There are concerns over a two-tier system between new and existing claimants, for example. Many questions asked about why not wait until this review concludes next year before bringing in the changes. And there's a Welsh dynamic to this as well. The Senedd election is looming next May. Will Labour here in Wales bear the brunt of what could be deemed an unpopular decision made by the UK Labour government at Westminster? You know, the Labour government here, the Welsh Labour government, have welcomed the changes tonight, but perhaps might some voters feel that they should have called this out a little sooner than they did. And what if taxes go up, Nick, to pay for this? They need to find £2.5 billion now, the UK government. If those taxes were to go up, it would be on the eve, probably, of that Senedd election next May. An awful lot at stake, not just for people claiming PIP, claiming universal credit here, a really big political dynamic to this too, particularly in Wales. OK,
Gareth, thank you for that. 2 Swansea men have been cleared of conspiring to hire a hitman to kill the estranged wife of one of them. The prosecution had alleged that Paul Lewis had paid Dominique Saunders £1,500 to arrange the killing of Paul Lewis's estranged wife between February and April 2023. The defence teams of both men told the jury that Saunders had scammed Lewis out of the money and never had the ability or intention to arrange a hitman. Stephen Fairclough reports from Merthyr Tydfil Crown Court.
It took the jury a little over 2 hours to find the 2 men not guilty of conspiracy to murder. There were smiles in the dock as the forewoman of the jury read out the verdicts. The jury had been told that the verdicts must be the same for the 2 men. The prosecution had claimed that there had been an agreement between the 2 men to arrange a hitman to kill the estranged wife of Paul Lewis, that Mr. Lewis had taken £1,500 out of the bank to pay for it, and that he'd given that money to Dominique Saunders to arrange a hitman, and that messages between the 2 men showed the conspiracy. The prosecution said it didn't matter that no one had been harmed in order for there to be a conspiracy to murder. Neither man gave evidence themselves, but their lawyers told the jury that Lewis had been scammed by Saunders, who had taken his money with neither the ability or the intention to arrange a hitman. The court heard that Lewis had suffered from long periods of mental ill health and had been in a psychiatric hospital for some of the time relating to this case. His lawyer said this case concerns a mentally ill man and a scammer who was a fraudster. Saunders' barristers told the court that his client may be worthy of condemnation, but it wasn't evidence of an arrangement to kill. The judge thanked the jury for their work on the case and said that their work had been carried out diligently and carefully. Stephen Fairclough, BBC Wales Today, Merthyr Tydfil Crown Court.
A man who served on the jury in his school stabbing trial, which later collapsed, has been charged with engaging in prohibited conduct while serving on the jury. It's alleged Christopher Elias, seen here at a previous hearing, intentionally failed to complete a juror questionnaire and disclose a connection with the school and persons associated with the trial. It relates to the initial trial of a girl who stabbed 2 teachers and a pupil at Ysgol Dyffryn Ammon, which saw a retrial. An inquest has heard an overdose of medication given to an 88-year-old care home resident in Kinmel Bay did contribute to his death 2 months later. The hearing at Ruthin was told the former chip shop owner, John Collinson, who had dementia, died in August 2022, 8 weeks after he was given 10 times more than his correct dose of medication over 4 days. Sarah Easdale reports.
Well, during today's hearing, Mr. Collinson's son, Kevin Collinson, described how his father had lived at Kimnell Lodge for about 2 years after developing dementia and had been started on a low dose of the drug risperidone in January 2022. Mr. Collinson described how his dad had been physically mobile, even dancing at a Queen's Jubilee celebration just a few weeks before he suddenly became wiped out and confined to his bed. He knew something wasn't right with his father when he visited on July the 1st in 2022 and suspected it was something to do with the medication, but was told nothing was amiss with the dosage. However, a few days later, a manager at the care home realised he was being given two 2.5ml doses of risperidone instead of the prescribed 0.25 twice a day. The inquest heard the error had occurred as a result of a miscalculation after Mr. Collinson's medication changed from being administered in pill form to being given in liquid form. Well, the inquest also heard from Samantha Luty, the manager of Criminal Lodge, and she said that since the mistake, practices in medicine had been changed at the home in how the medicine was administered. Well, in his conclusion, the coroner for North Wales East and Central, John Gittins, said that Mr. Collinson died as a result of deep vein thrombosis, adding that his immobility as a result of the medication error had more than minimally contributed to his death. Well, I spoke to Mr. Collinson's family after the hearing.
It was clear that Dad had had an overdose of risperidone. He'd had 10 times the amount that he should have had twice a day for a week, and during that whole period of time he was zombified, he was absolutely zonked.
I think we're kind of relieved now because it's now on record that what's happened to Dad, and the evidence was there to support it, and we feel like we've been listened to.
Well, John Gittins said that he was satisfied that significant efforts had been made at Criminal Lodge in the dispensing of medications and that staff continue to be monitored and trained. However, Mr. Collinson's son said that he felt that what had happened was concerning more widely and exposed cracks in dementia care more generally.
Sarah Easdale reporting there. You're watching Wales Today, still to come before 7. What a welcome. We're live in Switzerland, where the Wales players have taken part in their first training session since arriving there for the Euros.
And with talk of heat waves in England, still a humid start to the week across Wales, but feeling fresher by midweek. A full forecast on the way.
Now, it's been a huge day for Mimi Zhu, the 17-year-old tennis sensation from Swansea, who's making her senior Wimbledon debut against none other than Emma Raducanu. Raducanu took the first set, but Mimi is battling hard in the second, but the British #1 is looking perhaps too strong on the day. Well, they're watching closely at the place where Mimi developed much of her game, the Swansea Tennis Centre. And Sarah David is there for us tonight. Sarah.
Well, Nick, the playing continues in Wimbledon, but also here at Swansea Tennis Centre. And if we look into reception, it's very quiet in there, and you can be able to see some people glued to the big screens watching the 17-year-old from Sketty making her Wimbledon debut and also making history as the first Welsh player in 20 years to make the singles draw. Now, I'm joined here by one of Mimi's former coaches, Luke Simeone. Thanks for joining us, Luke. How do you feel watching one of your former players playing at Wimbledon?
Yeah, as a coaching team and as a centre, we're incredibly proud of her from her coming in at 5 and staying with us till 12. We feel like we've played a small part in her journey, and it's great that we've been able to help her along her journey, but we're incredibly proud of what she's going on to do and what she's doing at the minute.
And you yourself played alongside Mimi on these courts. Was it obvious back then that she was destined for Wimbledon?
Yeah, she was a fantastic player. I think one thing that she was so driven, hard-working, every day wanted to get better. And you could feel that sort of energy that she brought into the centre every day, that she wanted to be the best, and she set real standards of herself and high standards that she wanted to be the best player she can be, and she's going to keep developing as she matures on the WTA tour.
Yeah, we can see that a lot of youngsters training here behind us. What are your hopes for the effect this will have on the next generation of tennis players here in Swansea?
Yeah, everyone come in with a massive buzz today. The players in the academy are so happy to see how well she's doing, and hopefully that's inspiring them to go and achieve what she does. Everyone goes on different pathways in tennis, but the players have come in today so inspired by what they're seeing on the telly. We had squad earlier, and the players are just checking the tellies to try and see the score, but we're incredibly proud as a coaching team, as a centre, but also the players now in the academy. We're so proud of what she's doing, and hopefully we can produce another one to go and play at Wimbledon.
Brilliant, Luke. Thanks very much. I'll let you get back to that match now. It's certainly been a day for Mimi Dew to make her mark on the biggest stage possible, and there'll be another opportunity for her to do that in a few days' time as she plays alongside Ella McDonald in the women's doubles. And I'm sure that everyone here at Swansea Tennis Centre will be watching, Nick.
I'm sure they will. Sarah, thank you very much indeed, and good luck to Mimi. Well, not long to go now until Wales get their long-awaited Euros campaign underway. The squad have arrived in Switzerland and have even taken part in their first training session. Thomas David is in Weinfelden for us tonight. Thomas.
Yeah, Nick, within the northeast of the country tonight, close to the German border, which is a few miles that way. And this is one of the main roads in Weinfelden. It's a quaint old town, and as you can probably see, pretty quiet, a world away from the hype you may encounter in one of the cities hosting matches during this tournament. But that may suit the players, allow them to focus on the job in hand. But the tranquility was interrupted somewhat today when hundreds of school kids arrived to give the players a warm welcome.
Please sign this one, please.
The players in demand.
Oh my God.
Ahead of their first appearance at a major tournament, with hundreds of school children on hand to welcome the team to Switzerland.
It's truly overwhelming. It's a pretty cool experience, and yeah, it feels real now. It's starting to, as soon as we get on the training field and come to terms with everything, it's honestly just pure excitement from the group, and we just can't wait to get started.
There's just 5 days before their opening game against the Netherlands. Tournament football, a new experience. The players taking it all in.
I'm trying to learn some little bits of the language from the kids and stuff like that, so yeah, it's incredible. I've learned danke and bitte. It's very basic, but I'm trying.
It's starting to sink in a little bit. There's so many people here that have come out, and the support's been amazing from the locals, and yeah, it's just amazing to be here.
A delegation from Wales, which included Sophie Ingle, arrived here weeks ago, establishing ties with local schools.
It's very special. I'm very happy. I also play football. I already met someone like 2 months ago. Sophie, I think. Yeah.
Sophie Ingle.
Sophie, yeah. It was very nice. She signed my clothes.
Great honor. First we have Switzerland, or the second team for us it's Wales. Yeah.
So cool, and I'm very excited to see the girls, and they are so beautiful.
Temperatures are soaring to over 30 Celsius. The players cooling down any way they can. Warm weather training in Portugal has prepared them for these conditions. 6 months after qualifying, Wales have finally made it to Switzerland. This, their first training session. Weinfelden, their home for the next fortnight at least. But not many are tipping Wales to stay beyond the group stages. But the players are adamant. They're not here to make up the numbers and could cause some upsets here in Switzerland. Well, that's the plan. We'll hear from the players again tomorrow. The scrutiny will only intensify as we edge ever closer to that opening game in the city of Lucerne against the Netherlands on Saturday, Nick.
OK, Thomas, we will speak to you then. Tributes have been paid tonight to the opera singer Stuart Burrows, who's died at the age of 92. The renowned tenor from Kilfynydd near Pontypridd performed on some of the world's greatest musical stages in his career. Nellie Bird looks back at his life.
The incredible voice of Stuart Burrows. He was a household name in the 70s and 80s with his BBC Two programme Stuart Burrows Sings, bringing opera into our living rooms, alongside the best performers like the New Zealand singer Kiri Takanawa. His big break came in 1965 when the composer Stravinsky asked him to sing his opera Oedipus Rex in Athens.
He wanted me to go on to Madrid with him, but at that time I couldn't because I was already committed to a concert in Wales in Pontypridd Fendigaid. How about that? So I said no, I couldn't. I couldn't cancel it. I had to go there.
He would go on to sing at the world-famous opera house La Scala in Milan, as well as 12 seasons at the Met Opera in New York. But for those who knew him, there was more to his story than just the voice.
He lived in Kilfynydd, just down the road. He started singing around about the age of 8 or something like that, singing from the bedroom window, which was open. And then his first performance was in Bethel Chapel, he said, in Kilfynydd, at the age of 10. Then he won a few local competitions, and then it grew from there. He should have been knighted, really he should have, for the flag he flew for Wales in such extraordinary places, from such a humble beginning.
And that appreciation was echoed by generations of singers who Stuart Burrows inspired. Here he is in 1985, offering advice to a young Aled Jones, who he also sang with.
Well, that's what I hope, to be a tenor.
You hope to be a tenor?
Oh, yeah.
Today, Aled Jones said he was sad to hear about Stuart Burrows' death, calling him a mentor, the greatest lyric tenor of his generation, and a brilliant singer. Paying tribute to Stuart Burrows, who's died at the age of 92, forever remembered as one of Wales' greatest performers.
Lovely memories of Stuart Burrows there, who's died at the age of 92. Right, before we go to the weather, just to bring you bang up to date, confirmation, unfortunately, that Mimi Zhu has lost against Emma Raducanu at Wimbledon. Right, let's get the forecast. Sue is here. Hi, Sue. How's it looking?
Thanks very much. Well, heat waves making the headlines across the south and east of England. And it's been a hot day across southeast Wales, where the sun's been strongest. Cardiff, the hotspot, with temperatures touching 30 Celsius here, 29 in parts of Monmouthshire too. But it's not been the case everywhere. The satellite picture shows where it's been cloudy and hazy, particularly along these Irish Sea coasts with temperatures in the low 20s. So a humid start to the week. It'll turn fresher everywhere from midweek onwards, with rain returning later in the week. We're seeing the peak of the heat today. High pressure and southwesterly winds have been drawing up humid air from the Azores, but this weather system hovering in the Atlantic will move in, signalling the change to fresher air. Some evening sunshine. That thicker cloud moves in from the west overnight, a little drier in the east, a muggy night, lows of 14 to 16 Celsius. Tomorrow that cold front pushes closer, a little patchy drizzle left on it, but a band of thicker cloud moving in across north and west Wales, still drier and brighter in the southeast. A big difference in temperatures. Cooler, fresher air, 16 Celsius for Anglesey, 27 in Monmouthshire, where we're hanging on to the warmth. By Wednesday, early cloud clearing, brightening up through the day. Sunny spells, not as warm, high teens, low 20s, and then back to a changeable Atlantic influence. The pressure chart shows more unsettled weather, showery rain pushing in from the west towards the end of the week. So just briefly warmer to start this week. Temperatures back nearer normal through the middle of the week, and then a more unsettled end to it, with rain returning more widely by next weekend. Nick.
OK, Sue, thank you very much. That's Wales Today. I'll be back after the 10 o'clock news. Hope you can join me then. Until then, have a good evening.